Hello, children. Right,
Hello.
we're back. Back with this book, Steven Erikson's Malazan Book of the Fallen, book number 1, Gardens of the Moon. And I'm joined by Kalam, Quickpen, and Whiskey Jack, otherwise known as Adil, Gareth, and Alistair, to keep going here on our discussion. Although we should tell everybody that we're going to change the approach in this video. We're going to try and take bigger bites of the novel rather than dealing with a chapter in each video. We're going to deal with 3 in a sort of broader and more general approach to the chapters, because we kind of realized that at this rate the chances are quite heavy of one of us passing away before we get to the end of the novel. So this is going to be the first attempt at the broader context. Once again, if you are watching the videos or following along, or feel free to leave comments, tell us where we got things wrong. Unlikely, I know. But yeah, feel free. So we're dealing with chapters 6, 7, and 8 of the novel. And I thought, I mean, for you guys reading it for the first time, I don't know if this was your impression of it, but certainly from chapter 6, there's kind of a proliferation of characters. And I thought I'd maybe just ask you guys, did it feel like that to you? If it did any characters stand out, or did they kind of blur into each other?
I think the ones that are designed to stand, the ones that are designed to jump out, jumped out. But a lot of them, the other ones just sort of got caught in the background.
For sure. Yeah. I found myself, as I was reading it, having to check that character list at the front of the book a lot more often than I did in the prior chapters. But that being said, there were some flipping great characters that sort of came out from this chapter in particular. And Crone, for me, the Great
Crone
Raven. Cool. I mean, I know we'll probably talk about Crone in a bit, but wow, what a cool character.
Yeah, Crone the Great Raven. That's the second time we've seen it in the novel where Erikson's written from a point of view of a non-human. We had a Hound of Shadow, and now we've got a Great Raven.
Is this something that happens a lot throughout the series?
I don't even recall it happening until this reread. So I don't think it does.
It's interesting. Sure.
I think we also, I imagine it's quite hard to try and project a point of view from inside an animal. You're assuming a lot. Yeah. They're not ordinary animals by any means, obviously. But yeah, Adil, what did you think? I mean, a lot of characters. Anything standing out?
No, I mean, I thought that some of the characters being a little bit more kind of political in nature was interesting and related specifically to the city, because I think in some ways he's also making the city one of his characters, right? So this more so than he did with Pale or with and before. So I thought that was also quite interesting. I like the way that he talks about it, and I was at first in 2 minds about when he talks about which road they're walking down and which way they turn and all of that, and I sort of think, ooh, do I really want to go back to that map, or do I just want to try and remember it in my head? And I'm trying to build a feel for the city, and I thought it was quite a nice touch that he brought in there. I mean, in addition to all of the actual characters and trying to place where they are in the city was also a thing that I was trying to do.
Is Darugistan a desert city?
No, I don't think so. I think it's from what I can tell, the continent of Genebakis is fairly sort of forested in the north and kind of rolling hills in and around this particular place.
Yeah, because
what made you think?
I don't know. Just for some reason in my mind, obviously maybe it's just the name,
Also,
Darugistan.
it sounds, if you think about the countries called stuns in our
Yeah.
world, they're all generally in fairly arid parts of the world.
Yeah, that was the impression. And also there's talk of silks in the merchants, which is not traditional sort of log and timber affair.
Yeah.
And we get Crone, but Crone leads into her boss, Anamander Rake, who we meet for the first time. Emo badass.
So cool.
Drizzt de Erden, you mean?
Definitely got some Drizzt.
So who came first, Drizzt or Anamander?
Almost certainly Drizzt, hey?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's funny
What's
because
that? R.A. Salvatore, hey?
Yeah.
R.A. Salvatore.
Got to be at least 80s.
So Anamander was one of the characters that the guys gamed back in the day. And he was a character played by Ian Esselmont. And Ian Esselmont was an avid reader of, what's his name, British author Elric.
Oh,
David
Michael
Eddings.
Michael
Moorcock.
Moorcock.
Yeah, Michael Moorcock. And so he just sort of took the idea of Elric's sword, Stormbringer, and used it in the game. But Erikson hadn't ever read any of the Moorcock books. So when he came to writing it, he assumed it, and he said he started getting complaints, people saying he'd plagiarized Moorcock, and he kept complaining, saying, I haven't read it. He didn't realize it was because the previous guy had.
That is hilarious.
Didn't know that. That's
Involuntary plagiarism.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Anyway,
so chapter 6, eh?
Yeah, in chapter 6 we learn a lot more about the sort of political machinations going on in the city.
And a bit more about Moonspawn and what sort of is happening there. And also, it's the first time you get like a description, like a proper sort of description of, I think, Anamander Rake. And he's what do you call that? Atista Andy, hey?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, Atista Andy, yeah.
And that's a race, like
It is.
Okay. And they
tall,
like dark-skinned,
very tall, sort of like weird pupils in their eyes. They are, one of several sort of non-races that are maybe giving away too much, but don't originate from this place.
Okay.
But he's the lord, he's the boss of the Tisti Andy.
And
I really like that there's a description. So he meets the high alchemist Baruch, who turns out, it seems from these chapters, is a man of some political importance, or more than anyone sort of really knows.
And definitely more than he lets on. I know when he's talking to Crone, he's like, who's he talking to? Turban or?
Yeah, one of the counselors.
He's like, I'm flattered that you think so, but I'm not really like, I don't really have any, like, on paper anyway, political power.
Well, I mean, but it seems
unwritten rule.
But it seems like Rake doesn't buy that either. He comes straight to the guy to have a talk. So they all seem to like realize this is the guy. He's the power broker in the city. But there's a description of how the lights dim and there's this pressure that builds, and the alchemist I think the description is of a giant's hand taking hold of the building. And then just sort of crushing it, and the pressure building and suddenly releasing, and then Rake suddenly in his room, which I really enjoyed, I must say.
Yeah, I found chapter 6 one of the better written ones out of what I've read so far. I just slipped into it really easily. Starting with Crone. I thought Crone was beautifully written. I like that, and especially when you get that little hint of what she's got to go and do. And then you go into something else, and then you meet the watchman, the guard. I liked that. I thought chapter 6 was good. Very strong chapter.
Yeah, and it's
for sure.
I think it's also, I mean, it gives you more an idea of what's going on because you get all these, you get this concept of this council that's in charge, well, ostensibly in charge of the city, or think they're in charge of the city.
Yeah,
and they're trying to negotiate or pass a vote to get some form of agreement with the Malazans. I think they call it a neutrality, an agreement of neutrality, basically protecting their own skins, essentially. Whereas the real decisions are being made by people like Baruch and Anamander Rake. character called the Eel, who we hear about in this chapter for the first time. What did you guys make of that?
Yeah, I was a bit confused. So the first character that you meet is a guardsman,
Circle breaker.
circle breaker, and so he's a spy. And he's obviously been around for a while, because there's a nice line where he says the leather around his short sword handle is well worn, so he's obviously used to using it. And then he obviously does the night shift, as it were, and then Turban Orr often joins him. I didn't understand why.
I got the sense that Turban Orr uses that place to meet with people that he's having secret discussions with, and he just kind of tolerates the guard because he's just a guard. He doesn't sort of looks down on him, doesn't think he's he's any
doesn't realize.
And so Circle Breaker is secretly reporting this information back to Baruch.
Well, he's reporting to the Eel.
Yes, but he lets Baruch know, or.
Well, then you get the message to Baruch from the Eel saying this so-and-so met with so-and-so.
Okay. So that wasn't from Circle Breaker.
Well, it originated from Circle Breaker.
Yeah, okay.
And then that's all sorts of political games going on, because we learned in other chapters about this kind of assassins' war that's happening. Now we're hearing about Malazans are close by. The council want to try and get an agreement with them, some kind of neutrality pact, and that's all sort of happening at the same time. So I think there is quite a lot going on in this chapter.
It is a busy chapter for sure. It jumps around
it
a
is.
lot.
Yeah, it did. But like I said, I mean, to me, it made a lot more sense. Maybe just because I'm, each time I read it, I'm getting a bit used to his style. I just found it flowed. These Darujistan chapters are flowing a lot easier than the intro bits, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like they're slightly written at a slightly quicker pace. Maybe a lot more seems to happen per page in these chapters than in some of the other ones. There's a lot more sort of like vivid, long descriptors, which is sort of happening less and less.
Yeah.
So we have no real hint of the Eel or who the Eel is. Just the Eel's this person.
I think there are hints. When you know, you know.
Yeah.
But and when you start seeing the deliberate hints that are being dropped.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a bit of a whodunit,
That's interesting.
Yeah, my only advice is stay awake, because the hints are there. Like when you.
Are they theoretically catchable for someone who's never read it before?
It's kind of like a good whodunit, where you've actually, when you go back and you find out who did do it, and then you see the trail, the breadcrumbs was actually there, rather than these thrillers that just never give you a chance and then tell you who the killer was.
But I can barely figure out what's going on just trying to read the book normally. Never mind unpack hidden mysteries and double sort of meanings and foreshadowing.
Absolutely.
I'm just like desperately clinging onto the steering wheel
as the car is hurtling across along the road.
Someone's cut the brakes.
I mean, you get a sense with Erikson's writing. I find that whenever noblemen are involved, he's writing with this underlying dislike for them. Just seems to me that I don't know if you picked that up, but it just feels that way. Like every member of the council is described as slightly shady in some way or another.
But they always are, though.
Yeah, I suppose they are.
Even in our world, they are, regardless.
Yeah. And then in this chapter, we also get this kind of, in addition to this political machination, we get the scene of Ralik Nom, who's one of the locals at the Phoenix Inn, about to assassinate somebody, and he's got his crossbow at the ready, and there's Lady Simtal, and one of the councilmen is with her, and he's basically aiming the crossbow, and then at the last minute changes his mind. We don't know exactly why or what, or why he's trying to kill someone in the first place. I reckon that piece might have been a bit jarring to somebody reading it for the first time. Was it like?
No, not really, because I think he describes who she is, and then you get the impression, okay, so she's, pardon the pun, hobnobbing with various politicians.
Yeah.
And obviously there's some sort of she has an agenda behind that they obviously don't see. They just see her as, this beautiful female form. But she's obviously up to something. And then I got the impression that he'd been hired, or no, sorry, it was it like a revenge plot, if I'm remembering correctly?
Yeah,
So,
it does have something to do with revenge.
So if it's a revenge plot, then it's a personal thing. It's between him and her. So then I thought, okay, so then obviously that's not what's going on that we read in chapter 5 with the thieves and the assassins and the rooftop squabbles and all of that kind of thing. So I thought there was definitely some sort of a personal. I didn't find it jarring in any way, to answer your question. I thought it was made sense to me.
Yeah.
You guys?
You definitely get the feeling that there's history there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't find it jarring. I mean, I think he's actually one of my new favorite characters. But
Relic,
he was,
I
was,
like him too. Yeah, he's one of my favorites as well.
He seemed like a good sort of no nonsense sort of dude, and I did like, hearing through his kind of point of view what was going on, and I almost got the sense, like that. Like you've got a sniper scope and you're sort of watching these two with the sniper scope, and it was actually quite a cool little piece.
But I do recall that the coin or something like that plays a part in his decision at the end when he's about to pull the trigger. There's a spinning coin or something referred to.
Well, so for once, he doesn't say that it's a spinning coin, but he does say it's a whirring, spinning sound filled his head.
Okay. All right, so he's not hitting us over the head with exactly the same metaphor.
Yeah. No, but was that not him referring to choosing between one of the two potential targets, right?
Yes, but we know that the god Apon
is a male-female
is involved somehow and is trying to manipulate proceedings.
It was that sort of having him sort of go between the targets and the coin. It's very clever.
So he's trying to decide, heads or tails. It's interesting because I heard an interview with Erikson and Esselmont, and because the story started as a script, they were talking about their influences when they were writing the script, and one of them was Alexander Dumas'
Three Musketeers.
Musketeers stories.
Yeah.
And I must say, I didn't get a lot of that. I mean, they're like talking about the characters and who operate within the city is very similar to the Three Musketeers.
You can see that.
Lady Simtal, who's Milady kind of, and there's, but I didn't. Maybe I haven't read Dumas for so long. I probably couldn't remember those stories anyway.
Dumbass, as we call him around here. Dumbass.
Alexandre Dumbass.
Dumbass. Yeah, I think just to take it back. Sorry to break the flow. But just to take it back to that section where the alchemist sitting in his room, the crow, the raven, smash, the warren, the pressure, the harbinger of my boss wants to see you. I loved that. I thought that was really, 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 really cool.
Transforming itself into a hound in the corner of the room and just sort of chuckling along as Baruch is the only one who can see the true form or whatever. It's great.
Yeah, and my favorite line of the chapter comes from that. It's page 199 where he says, where Crone says, "Your answer rode the very breath of your words," because he ends the sentence with peace.
Yes,
and I love that. Your answer rode the very breath of your words.
Yeah, actually, Crone is quite something, and Baruch is clearly very powerful.
Yeah.
And he is. I mean, I find Crone she's a bit mad. Even like Anna Mandarake comes and says, "How did Crone behave herself?" Basically, a bit over the top. Coming from him, that's a lot.
But Crone's ancient, hey, like thousands.
They the great ravens.
Unreal.
I think
they all occupy Moonspawn.
I think that scene and the very, very, very first scene in the book, the prologue. I think those two are brilliant. I got very much Edgar Allan Poe vibes, like a dark study and candlelight.
But also in that conversation, Rake does sort of talk a bit about what happened at the Siege of Pale. Which casts it in a slightly different light.
It says a lot about Taishan.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Which means that girl, what's her name?
Tattersall.
Tattersall. So she was right then.
Well,
because now you see it from the other point of view. So you see it from Amanda Rake standing on or whatever, watching down, and then you realize that so she wasn't making it up. It did actually happen.
Yeah.
And then also why it fell so quickly after having been at siege for so long.
Yeah.
And
well, he says all the sorcerers basically betrayed the city.
Yeah, they fled.
And then I think he wiped them all out as a result of it.
Yeah, with the sword. And then Baruch tells him that there's some of them fled to Darugistan, and he's I want their heads.
Yeah.
And then he says, "How are you going to do it? How did you kill them with my sword?"
Yeah. I think this chapter we also get. I mean, it's like there's the political element. Then we get our sort of the local boys at the Phoenix Inn. The group that consists of Krupp, Crocus, Ralik Nom, the sort of dandy called Morelia, or Aramis, if you want to call him that. And then the drunk Cole, who's sort of like clearly an alcoholic. And they're all sort of
done anything yet.
And he hasn't done anything yet. And they're all kind of playing cards and just generally shithousing in the inn. The civilians. I like them as a group. It feels very D&D,
Yeah.
That
definitely.
group.
Yeah.
You're not tired of Krupp yet, Gareth?
I like Krupp.
I love him, dude. And also on the audiobook, the guy who does the Krupp voice makes him sound a little bit like Yoda. So I can never get enough. It's like, Kruppa is the best at casting spells with my perfectly symmetrical body. It's like ridiculous. So yeah, it's very entertaining to listen to. Kruppa would never do this.
That's exactly, you got it quite well, actually.
Oh man, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think that helps. So yeah, but so is his whole thing now? They're playing cards, and he's basically just drags his turn out until everyone else basically gives up.
Yeah, he slow rolls until they all leave because he's so damn boring.
Oh man!
Yeah.
But it's
if only that was a way to win board games, I'd be the winner.
Yeah, he just torments everyone by talking to them. But you also get more of Crocus sort of wondering, feeling a little bit out of the loop because Ralik Nom and Morelia are up to something and they haven't included him. And he's got this kind of 17-year-old angst, which is quite interesting.
But is there a separation between the assassins and the thieves?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, because that's what I understood. So Nom's an assassin.
He is.
Crocus was the thief.
Crocus is the thief, yeah.
Yeah, and he was the one who broke into the girls' chambers. Yeah. And then that guy, one of the guys appears and warns.
Yeah,
Nom,
that's
because then he uses that word. We lost several roamers. And I thought that was a cool word for thieves, roamers. I thought that was
that actually takes us on to the next chapter because the next chapter is more about those guys than it is about the politics. And you get the scene with Morelia and Ralik Nom engineering an invitation to this party that's being thrown by Lady Simtal, which is going to be the event of the century, no doubt. But it's clearly furthering some agenda that they have. Because there's that scene, and then Ralik Nom gets basically he's been told in the previous chapter that he's basically bait.
Yeah.
For whatever's going on in the Assassins Guild, and he has to walk around town making sure everyone knows he's an assassin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let people follow him. Let people see him.
Yeah.
Let
Leave
people
no
know
doubt
where he
as
is.
to what it is you do.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's true.
it doesn't sound very safe. But and then he and Morelio are clearly up to something. And then Crocus is busy snooping around Turban Orr's, I think it's Turban Orr's residence. And Rallick basically tells him, you know, stay away from here. Don't get anywhere near this place.
Mm.
And then, I mean, there's a lot of sort of scenes between those guys, which I quite like. I mean, it's kind of like the everyday life, although it's, you know, they're assassins and thieves. But I mean, it's not about the military. It's not about warfare or grand politics. It's just about these guys doing whatever it is they do. And I quite like those. I like those characters.
I also like the characters. I mean, there were a couple of points where it started to feel a bit like a soap opera.
Yes.
But I was like, I was kind of intrigued by all of it, and then trying to keep it all straight as to like who Murillo was trying to chat with this time, and what the whole plan was, and you know, the way that he was telling the story was also trying to keep us intrigued and kind of following along, but without giving us too much, so sort of dropping sort of the breadcrumbs. And I think in some places it did feel a little bit like he was overdoing that a bit, right? I mean, he could have just, some of it he could have just told us,
spoken more plainly.
And it just felt a bit odd that he was doing it in a very roundabout way. But you know, especially the bits with Krupp in it, I thought were kind of entertaining and sort of brought you along with on that journey. And it, you know, to be fair, I mean, the chapters were not all that long, and he kind of does get there eventually.
I think so. I mean, I think you're right. I'd forgotten, of course, completely that this chapter opens with another one of Krupp's dreams.
Which chapter?
Chapter 6.
7.
7, sorry.
7 does, not 6.
Yeah, 7. So we moving on to 7. Krupp is now walking around and he's walking in through the woods, sees a fire, and ends up sharing the fire with one of the elder gods, Cruel.
Yeah.
Oh, what a cool
like
scene.
that.
Wow, that scene.
Yeah, that was good.
It was ominous as hell, because, I mean, you've got a god who hasn't been seen for millennia saying, well, blood has been spilt in my name, so I'm coming back, basically. And
or was it blood has been spilt on the stones, on my
yes,
stones?
Yes, because do you remember Tallow Crafar?
Yeah.
The assassin who was shot? He was shot in Krull's belfry.
Okay.
So he's obviously bled out lying on those stones.
Yeah. It's like an assassin's bolt straight over Gareth's head.
Yeah. And he's, you know, he talks about being, he comes from an era being worshipped with blood and split bones, and you know, you're not one of these modern fancy gods. You know,
it's properly metal.
Black metal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that I think of all the scenes, that was probably my favorite, actually, of the ones we read in these chapters.
Yeah.
And it's short. It's just a little brief meeting. Still don't know why Krupp is having these kind of dreams of premonitions in them.
I mean, up until this point, also, we haven't really seen Krupp demonstrate any sort of power. He just talks about it. But I mean, is he as powerful as he suggests?
We do see a bit of his power in action if you're reading carefully in this chapter, because there's a scene where, and you really have to read carefully. I read it twice because I think I missed it the first time. There's a scene where Crocus goes to Krupp and he says, "Have you sold all the stuff I stole from that girl?" And he says, "Yeah, I know, because I want to get some of it back." And they assume it's because he's infatuated with it. But then he shows Krupp the coin.
Yeah.
And then Krupp says, "Oh, let me have a look at the coin and just check if there's a wagon outside that's got red and green flags or something on it."
Yeah.
And then Crocus comes back and Krupp hands him the coin, and it's got he feels a bit of waxy on his fingers.
Yeah.
And in the next scene, Krupp's got a perfect wax likeness of the coin, which he's showing Baruch. So, I mean, he's doing something.
I mean, that could be just aggressive arts and crafts.
Excellent sleight of hand.
Yeah.
Just wham into whatever.
Yeah. I get the impression, and I'm probably wrong, that Krupp or whatever third person speaking man.
Hmm.
A lot of that is a facade.
I'm with you, Al.
Mm.
I'm thinking this is the role that I play. I'm the butt of everyone's joke. I'm long-winded.
Yeah.
I'm pompous. I've done all of these things, and yet I've probably never done any of them. But it just, to me, it just feels, reading it, it's almost like it's tongue-in-cheek. But
Yeah.
no one's caught the joke yet.
But I mean,
Yeah,
if
he
that's
seems to be
true,
ahead. He seems to be ahead of people a lot of the time.
but I mean, if that's true, he still talks and acts so strangely, even in his own dreams. So
Yes,
That's also true.
It's
Yeah,
like,
that's
that's right.
if that's the case, it's just permeated through and actually just become who he is now after, probably thousands of years or however long doing it. These freaking mages.
Yeah.
But he did show when he was talking to Baruch at one point where like he could actually change gears, right? And like Baruch said to him, "Listen, just get to it." And then there was almost that period, that small period where he just like he was on another level. He just changed everything, the way he talked and everything, and then just slipped back into it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was also pretty cool.
Yeah.
It showed that there is a bit of depth there.
Yeah,
But it's also I find it interesting because he's almost the opposite of that circle breaker that you meet, because circle breaker is doing the opposite. He's trying very hard not to be anything but a god.
Yeah.
So that if any wizard probes his mind or they torture him, then he's just a god. And I find, and that's what brought my attention to Crippa, thinking circle breaker's underplaying himself. He's just this, see no evil, hear no evil kind of guy, and Crippa's the complete opposite.
Yeah, he is. He's like, it's almost like if I'm so out there that people won't notice me, kind of thing.
Yeah. Or just underestimate the hell out of me.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that final scene where he takes the coin. I mean, I think he's clearly working for Baruch as well, because he gets introduced as one of your agents or one of your employees or something. He comes and tells him about the coin and his concerns about God's meddling, etc. It's the scene where they got I think they have Baruch's bothered. It was quite funny because he talks about being bothered by the sounds of the road workers in his road below him.
Yeah.
I was reading that at the office the other day, and they were renovating the bathrooms in our building. I knew it. I kind of felt it.
But the thing that surprised me in that conversation was when he then intimated that the rest of the friends were all agents as well, and that took me a little bit by surprise. Like I could see Krupp being an agent, but I didn't see the whole group of them being agents. So that's quite a cool twist.
It is. They all are, and I mean we know that Krupp is Crocus's fence, so when Crocus steals stuff, Krupp sells it for him and gets rid of it.
But you'd think surely Krupp would be above all that.
But they clearly all are in the employ of Baruch at some level.
Yeah.
Krupp's a dark horse.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, you obviously know, but we don't know.
I do. Well,
I mean, don't give it away. But I'm thinking he's a dark horse. There's more to Yoda than meets the eye.
Before we leave Darujistan and move back to our bridge burners, closing comments on these two chapters, the scenes in Darujistan, how to make you feel, any bits that stuck out?
I want to just mention, so Lady
Simtel. Yeah.
And then she finds out, she's getting sued by her paramour's wife, and then she has a meeting with
another counselor,
and then because then she realizes that the big meeting that is mentioned in chapter 6 about neutrality, the one person that was going to swing that vote was assassinated. And that took me back to, so he was sitting on the roof and he was going to take her out from revenge, but then in his mind the coin, and then he's been manipulated. So it's you see this overarching. At the moment, it's still like gossamer, like spider webs, but they're all starting to gently solidify
But I saw Rob hiding his smile there as you were talking. You're onto something, Al.
Yeah, no.
You're onto something, brother.
He-
Follow that trail.
This world operates on these levels. You know, you have these gods trying to get through their own petty agendas, and then the people below them also trying to do the same. And yeah, no, I think it's and then she's actually talking in that second conversation to Turban Orr. So it seems she takes counselors to her bed when she needs information or whatever. But she's the whole time trying to convince Orr to kill somebody. She doesn't say who, but basically saying.
But doesn't she suggest that it's her husband that she's trying to get him to kill?
I don't know if she does. Maybe you might have read it more thoroughly than me, Adil, but he could be, because I know who it is she's trying to get them to kill. I just don't want to give away something inadvertently. Sure,
I'll try and find that bit, but I had to read it a couple of times, and I think that it seemed to me that she was talking about her husband, and because she had thought about him at that point, and then she said something, but it could, they did leave it open a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's much of a spoiler. I just don't want to say who she's trying to get to kill, because I don't know if that person is her husband or was. But anyway,
I'm not remembering that. I'm just remembering the fact that that guy died for a reason. Swing the vote.
Yeah. So that assassination, I got a sense he was aiming at her and then changed his target and shot whoever she was with.
100% my understanding
and
as well.
That guy was the counselor who was going to vote for the neutrality.
Yeah.
So they didn't get there. Didn't get what they wanted in the council.
No. So, because obviously, I mean, what's his name? Is it Turban or Baruch's trying to set himself up as de facto leader?
Turban Orr is trying to sort of
set himself up as the leader of Darishistan and be the representative to the Malazans. Yeah, because there's a great scene, chapter 6, where the alchemist goes back to his map and he's shading in the map in a full, like most of it's just red.
Yeah, he spills his wine over the map and he sees it as a sort of sign of, just blood flowing across the whole of Darishistan.
And sorry to take back to chapter 6 again, but then Rake talking about how they've moved their forces to the north and how they're fighting the Malazan there as well.
With what's his name, Caladan Brood.
Yeah,
another character we're still going to meet.
He has been mentioned before, though. Hey, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, the sense is, from a war perspective, the Malazans are not having it all their own way on this continent. And then we for the last chapter we go back to them, or to the bridge burners.
Oh, chapter 8.
Yeah,
which is 8. What book? Beginning of book 3, is it?
Yeah, it's the beginning of book 3, chapter 8. It's now I think it's called the plan or something like that. Or
the mission.
The mission. Sorry, the mission. And you now have the bridge burners on the other side of the lake, which upon which the Darishistan sits.
Yeah.
And we get this. It's kind of almost back to these characters kind of feeling to it. It's also mainly told through the point of view of Whiskey Jack, with the interlude which I'll leave, where Quick Ben follows Hairlock through the Warrens. But just getting back to the Whiskey Jack, the Whiskey Jack scene. We'll leave Hairlock for Alistair.
Pinocchio.
But Whiskey Jack is an interesting one, because once again we have some of the Moranth involved.
Yeah.
And the Moranth referred to him, and this is sorry to Steven Erikson fanboy at this point, but the Moranth refers to him as bird who steals. And I remembered when I read it that from someone else, hearing from someone else, that a Whiskey Jack is actually a bird.
Okay.
In real life, we don't. It's not. We're in the southern hemisphere. We don't get them, but they exist. So I then did a Wikipedia search on Whiskey Jack, which is another name for.
This is a deep dive.
Wait. It's another name for a bird called the Canada jay, also known as the camp robber.
Okay.
So it is a bird who steals.
And Erikson's a Canadian.
But he is a Canadian, exactly. But also believed to be named after the Cree Indian Wizakejak, which is the trickster god. So
if you read Neil Gaiman, you would have known all that.
and I'm like, there's a bit of meta storytelling going on here, because this is all stuff from our world.
Yeah.
That's now being put into this novel. It made me freak out a little bit, I must say.
It is funny, yeah. Where do you draw the line? You know, they have rats, so
Rob's got all these maps and photos and red string.
No, red string. That was like,
It's the Canadians. They did it.
The trickster god of the Cree Indian, called Wizakejak, who's also a bird that steals in our world. And now you've got him being referred to as the bird that steals by one of the Moranth. It's just.
But I wonder if it's something that's like commonly known in Canada and we as South Africans.
I don't know. Maybe it is.
It's interesting. I mean, interesting.
With another author, potentially, but I know Erikson does engage in this kind of meta text.
It's cheeky shenanigans.
Yeah, and he tries to. So it might not. I don't think he was assuming a whiskey jack was common parlance. That's my little aside. What do you guys think of Whiskey Jack?
I like this chapter. I thought at the beginning was great. I liked it. It was nice to see him like fully in power, being the man that he is in the field. Yeah. No bullshit going on around him. No politics and wars and wizards and shit. It's just him and his men and women, obviously. I like that. I like that a lot. And it's nice just to see him do his thing. And I like to see the guys go through the motions because they're obviously like a well-oiled machine. Yeah. So I enjoyed that. I love the fact that the Moranth are there. I love the fact that they make specific mention of the green Moranth and the black Moranth. And the green Moranth obviously brought all the equipment, and then the black Moranth brought all the personnel. So I like that you now get to learn, okay, there's two types of Moranth. This one does this and this one does that. I like that. Yeah. And I love the fact that it opens this. You can just see him crouching on the shore of this lake looking over at his target. Yeah. I thought that was very enjoyable.
Yeah. They're clearly heading to the register.
Yeah. And they brought the boats.
Posing as fishermen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you say they're a well-oiled machine, but if I recall, part of the problem is they've loaded the boat while it's still on the land. They can't get it into the water.
Yeah, and I like that. And then also she's still there as well. Sorry, still there.
Yeah, still sort of hanging around, being ominous.
Yeah, and we need to catch fish. Has anyone been a fisherman? I've been a fisherman a long time ago, but she's only 15, so I don't know about that.
Yeah.
1,000-yard stare into nothing. I used to fish.
You used to fish.
It's like, what's that guy from Jaws? Quinn.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Boat, yeah.
I also like that Whiskey Jack. He's got that authority, but he's not above making a joke or two, right? Like I think to deal with a group like that, who with all these different characters, and some of them just want to take the piss at every sort of turn. He's able to deal with all of them in the appropriate way, the way that they need, and that just shows. I mean, he shows his strength as a leader there. I think he can, everyone in the whole group can relate to him in some way, and he knows how to deal with each one of them.
So then we have Quick Ben using little sticks and twine, which seems to be some kind of link or travel device that he uses to magically transport to find Hairlock. For me, probably the most confusing scene in all of these 3 chapters.
Yeah.
I couldn't quite get a grasp of what was going on in terms of the power dynamic between them. Did you guys get get a sense of it, because I must say I found the whole thing quite disconcerting.
Yeah.
I think the intro to that little bit, I don't know, I mean, I might be talking rubbish here, but I got the impression that it was written like that to show you what it would be like to go into a warren. So it is a bit jarring and a bit confusing, and up is down and down is up. And obviously Quick Ben, I got a sense that Quick Ben, again, because you don't really get to see what these characters have done before, you only get to see them what they're doing now. And I got a sense that Quick Ben is fairly powerful. He's more than we've been allowed to see.
Yeah.
And I think this exposes his powers a lot more, because he's been in these places and he tells Pinocchio that as well.
But I think even when Tattosel meets him for the first time, she's like, she feels his power as he walks past, and she's like, I should know who you are.
Yeah. So yeah.
But then also this Quick Ben, I mean, your friend Hairlock starts telling him all about what happened with the Hound of Shadow and how Perrin stabbed it. But he seems to be going off his rocker. And the sense I got was that Quick Ben is kind of realizing that this guy's getting more and more dangerous the more he sort of spends time hanging around in these warrens of chaos.
Yeah.
But he knew that before, right? I mean,
well, that's what confused me. I mean, surely he knew.
But I think he had warned about the fact that he's operating in the chaos and all of that, but maybe it's just taking hold faster than he had expected. I think previously when Hairlock spoke about, Quick Ben's trying to keep tabs on me, we got told that story from Hairlock's perspective, and Hairlock was like, well, I'm more than he can handle, and it just sounded to us at the time like it was just his hubris, right? But now we're hearing the same dynamic, but we're hearing it from Quick Ben's side, and Quick Ben saying, actually, this guy is maybe a bit too much to handle, and so now he's starting to worry about that dynamic, and so I think that's the first time we're seeing it from the other side, from outside, that actually Hairlock is dangerous. He is kind of powerful, but at the same time, Quick Ben reminds him of certain things. Like, I love the fact that he just kicks him in the chest and kicks him off the mountain.
Kicks him off the cliff and then says, I should probably worry about this guy.
Yeah. And it feels a bit like it's an Inception sort of thing, right? That like being in the warren feels almost like it's this weird dream world interaction that they're having.
But I think Hairlock is losing it, because Quick Ben is able to glean his thoughts. So he's obviously got no shield. Maybe in the past he had shields up to, to be able to defend what he's thinking. And he's thinking all these mad thoughts, but he's, Quick Ben's able to either understand what's going on or read his mind, because he's letting his defenses slip because he's so involved in chasing through these warrens.
Yeah, but it does make me. I mean, why I'm confused is Quick Ben is clearly a super bright character, super intelligent, and it does make me wonder what was the plan in the first place. Like you're gonna get this guy's life force, trap it in a puppet, send it into the chaos realm, and expect what? like flowers. I don't know. It doesn't.
Yeah. But has there been I don't recall. I mean, it's been a while since I read chapter 1, 2, or 3. But has there been a mention what the plan was?
No, it doesn't seem to be. No one seems to have spelled it out.
Yeah.
That could be just Erikson hiding it from us, in the sense that Adil described earlier.
I seem to remember him also saying that it was almost sending someone on a wild goose chase, right? So I mean, he was like trying to run through all the warrens and keep them.
Taishan was after him, was basically trying to track him down. Well, the Hounds of Shadow as well, and he was kind of just escaping them. But I mean, they wouldn't need to if he wasn't there in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then he mentions, because then Quick Ben doesn't know what's happened. He doesn't know that the hounds have got.
No, he finds out from Hairlock.
Yeah, which that threw me a little bit as well. And then also that was the hound gear.
gear. And then Quick Ben comes out of it, and he and Kalam arrive, and they see this debacle with the boat. For me, the funniest part was when Kalam and Quick Ben are laughing, and Whiskey Jack tells the others, go unpack the boat and get it in the water. And the two of them are like, we the sergeant's favorites, kind of. We're laughing at the others. He says, "What are you two waiting for?"
Get cracking.
Yeah,
Get cracking, boys.
Yeah, I like that.
But I was he dropped a little hint there to say, that Whiskey Jack was receiving Quick Ben, and Quick Ben said, "Oh, I need to tell you something. You're not going to like it." And he said, "Oh, come on, then tell me then," without changing his demeanor or anything. And then immediately after that, everything's different. Like they come away from it with a weird look on their faces. And so I'm interested to know what you guys think he said. Quick Ben came away from that interaction. Maybe he came back going, okay, we have to kill Hairlock, or we have to end him somehow because he's getting too dangerous. Or is there something else that I missed that he's now gleaned from that interaction? It almost feels, and I just wanted to also say that the Hairlock thing is starting, that interaction where he starts talking to himself almost felt a little bit like Gollum, right? It was like this whole split personality sort of thing that was starting to happen, and he's not quite keeping it together.
Yeah, it's something that Erikson does. It's done comedically with another character in later books to great effect, where this character has no inner monologue. He speaks everything he thinks and then doesn't realize he's saying it. It creates, but this is not a funny situation. This is sort of a guy who's sort of losing the ability to hide his inner thoughts, just like Gollum. Yeah, I agree with you. I think something changes in the way Quick Ben's realization causes him to change his view on something quite fundamental.
Yeah.
It was a short chapter. It was a good one.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it.
It was a bit shorter than I expected, because the previous one was a little bit longer, and then I got into this one and I was like, oh, whoa, it's done already.
Yes.
And I was enjoying being back with this group because we've got so much invested in them from earlier in the book.
Yeah.
And now it was like I wanted more.
Yeah, it was also a relief for me a little bit to get away from the soap opera and the whole sort of the council situation, which was a lot to try and sort of keep track of.
To more familiar waters.
But it's funny because we've been set up with two groups of people who are effectively on different sides of a war. And there's likable characters among all of them, and it's not as if you presented with this sides are the good guys and this side are the bad guys. I mean, if anything, morally, you've got the Rajasthan locals who haven't done anything to the empire and about to just get attacked. But then individually, they're probably far more morally corrupt than the soldiers who.
Yeah, I think what was weird in chapter 7 is that everyone in power is talking about the Malazan Empire and the threat and what's going to happen. But then when you go to Crocus and all the lads on the streets living amongst everyone, no one's talking about it.
Yeah, they're talking about getting invitations to parties.
And there's a squabble going on in the Thieves Guild, and this person's out. Well, whatever's going on is going on, but no one seems to be talking about the fact that there's this massive, heavily armed empire within a day's ride or two.
Yeah, he's just taken out another city by murdering everyone in it.
Yeah, and no one seems to be concerned about this. Everyone's going about their daily lives, but it's all the higher ups that are, and they're not even concerned. They're just vying for power.
Yeah, they just want to be in charge when the empire comes.
Well, they do mention how the nobles were dealt with in Pale, right? So I think it's part of
ravens, feasting on their blood.
Yeah, Malazan standard operating procedure is to literally assassinate every noble in the place before they invade, which is So I can imagine the nobles would be a little bit more concerned than anyone else.
Yeah, I'm surprised there are not a lot of them leaving already, right? I mean, they had that whole. There was some people arriving. There was one scene that we didn't talk about where they saw them arriving at the city's gates, and realizing that they basically just come into another war zone and they're about to get taken. But surely there would be people leaving the city, because there must be other cities to go to. Sure.
Yeah. Although there is a mention in so if you look on the map, the continent of Genebakis is like this sort of long, thin slice. The Malazans are fighting in the north, and as you go south, you get Pale, and then you get Darujistan. There's reference in this chapter, it's a throwaway line, to a war that's happening further south with an entity known as the Panian Domin.
That's it. Yeah, I remember that.
That's been taking over cities. So I don't think it's as easy as, well, we just move to the next city. I think there's war all over the place in this continent.
Yeah, we're just focusing on the Malazan.
Yeah, we're focusing on one war, but there's others.
Because I like that Circle Breaker in chapter 6. Because he's going back to his room, that place where he can quieten his mind and completely not be a spy. And he mentions, I think it was him. He mentions walking through the market, and how he sees that the selections in the market have dwindled since the war. So people are obviously, trade has been interrupted into this place.
And he mentions, and it's in his point of view where he talks about the war that's going on with the Panian Domin
down south.
Down south. Yeah. Before we close, guys, any favorite characters, favorite scenes?
Dude, I don't know. I'm starting to. I don't mind jumping around, but I don't like jumping around for jumping around's sake. And I find that I'm getting into a character, I'm getting into someone and then I get pulled away, and then I'm going into another scene with another person, and then I'm getting pulled out of that, and then I'm getting put into somewhere else, and I like Whiskey Jack. He's great because he's well written, and I like that scene with Advander Rake, and I just wish I got to spend a bit more time with them, like guys like Quick Ben and Tadasel and things like that, instead of just being pulled out and shown all these different, which works in a movie, which works in a television show, but when it's literature, it's I don't know. I don't think it's his best. It's my opinion, but I don't think that's his best feature. I wish I could stick with them for a little bit longer, just to really
I think
understand.
that's a fair point. It's particularly in this novel. I think it's.
But to some extent, isn't that also the spinning coin, right? So he's trying to show the two sides each time, and he jumps from one to the other. And to Rob's point, like the two of them are now, you're starting to see they're on either side of this lake, and they're kind of moving towards each other.
Yeah, there's a convergence.
So you can see the convergence coming.
Yeah.
But is it like this in the other books, though, going forward?
Not as haphazard as it is in this book. I think I honestly feel that this book is the most. It's the most escapist, but it's also the most haphazard in terms of its structure. And maybe that's because it's the first novel in the series. I'm not sure, but he definitely tightens that whole aspect up. Still have a whole lot of points of view of different people and cutting between them, but he very much works on convergence. You get a lot of people say the first half of all his novels is just a whole lot of tiny stories. And the second half is the coming together of those stories, explaining how they all interact.
It feels like we're at that point now.
Yeah, it almost feels like sort of getting to that.
But also, there's just so much thrown at you. I mean, as Adil mentioned in that chapter when they're walking through the city and he's turning down, this road and he's going up that road and he's going towards it. Like, I'm not going to remember any of that.
No, but I think it's. I mean, I don't. I struggle with that. I also started off looking at the map and then whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the Gadrobi district is, or where Mudgate or Oxgate or Two Oxgate is. Yeah, it doesn't really bother me. But I think there is a level of immersion created by it.
There is, but I get is it him? I mean, he's a good author. Is he trying to be too clever, or is it done to show you that he's written this place exists,
But it's almost, it's in the same way that like a lot of the time a filmmaker's first film will be the sort of the more experimental, the one that challenges the form a little bit more. And then sort of once they get that out of their system, they sort of settle down into something a little more, I don't know.
There is that, but also I think he's got a deliberate ideal when it comes to writing, and that is he's writing fantasy that isn't escapism. And he wants to show you that this is a fantasy secondary world, but it's as real as any other world. And it's not, I'm going to show you it. I'm going to show you the bits that you're going to like to read. I'm going to show you the bits that you don't want to read. And I'm going to show you everything about it, the nastiness, the good bits. And that's kind of his project in a lot of ways.
Because I get the impression, to me, I can see bits of other authors, like Lieber when it comes to the city, like Lankmar. I can see that vibe because Lieber does that. I get those hints of that in his writing. But then it's also almost a bit the bloodiness and the gore and all that stuff. That's also a bit proto. What's his name? Joe Abercrombie. So it's sort of like an early version of Joe Abercrombie before, obviously, Joe Abercrombie was writing his books. So it's kind of that mixture between 70s sci-fi fantasy and sort of mid-90s. That it's sort of, and it was, I suppose, really about the time that it was written, but it encapsulates those two worlds. Sort of this is what other people are going to pick up on and run with. Like the Whiskey Jacks of the world and the Bridge Burners, they're going to run with that aspect of it. And you get almost a sense of, it's almost like the end of a 70s era when it comes to like Dirigistan and things like that, the way that that's written. So it's definitely, I don't know. I mean, obviously he's distinct in his own voice. I mean, he is.
But I'm sure. I mean, I know he would definitely count amongst his influences those early American fantasy writers, Lieber, Howard, all that sort of crew.
Just the name Dirigistan to me is, when I first read it, I was very Conan-esque.
Yeah, well, I mean, Howard's world was basically an analog of ours. So the naming conventions are all very similar.
Yeah, I got heavy Conan vibes from that.
Yeah, awesome. And you guys, good scenes, characters that stand out?
Yeah, I think for me, like I said earlier, I think I just enjoyed coming back to Whiskey Jack. Yeah. But there were a lot of great. But I think for me, out of all of the scenes and the characters, Crone for me, I love it. And just getting to sort of see a little bit of Baruch and what's happening there, and then also get the Animander Rake's perspective on what happened at Pale. I thought was really sort of like super interesting, because you get like a lot of overt sort of like statement of what actually happened, rather than it just sort of being like, oh, I think I saw something earlier, in earlier chapters. So I found it, it's cool that we're sort of getting to dig a little deeper into some of the stuff even that we've already read about.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of really good bits. I'm quite interested to see what happens with Lady Simtol. So I thought she was an interesting character, and if Opon chose for her to live, like there's a reason somewhere there, right? So we're kind of keen to see why and what happens with that, and how she's pulling all the strings in the background.
Yeah.
For me, it was. I mean, I told you guys previously, I'm not a huge fan of Krupp, but I really liked that scene with Krul. I think I like the concept behind it of a deity that's been forgotten, like not even worshipped by anyone anymore, but is part of the prehistory of the world, and worshipped when people were more primitive. Now suddenly having some life breathed back into him. I just find that concept. That's a very Howard concept too, I suppose.
Well, it is, because he doesn't refer to it as an older god. He refers to him as an elder god. Yeah. So the second you read that, it's Lovecraft and Howard, like bang, okay, so this thing's going to be horrible, There's at the moment it's like a hand. There's just so many, offshoots and pathways, and I'm just waiting for that hand to close and for it all to come together.
In the next 3
We've got
chapters.
9 books to go, then we can get there.
I think in the next 3
Dude.
chapters, the hand will close. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
yeah. I'm probably going to be about 125 by book 10.
Yeah.